I'm going to click on the Alarms tab, and in this section we can set up our alarms. We have channel alarms, system alarms, and a recipients list for those alarm conditions. And of course, hopefully you know by now that we can send SMS text messages or emails to a recipient list. So one alarm's already set up in here, and they're real simple to add, but this one here for power supply is going to alarm when the battery is low. In fact, the trigger is 0 volts with a 1 volt deadband. If I wanted to add another alarm, I simply click the Add button. I'm going to select which channel I want to set that alarm for. And then I have alarm types of low, 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 high, and high, high. So you might want an alarm when your level gets to 8 inches, for example. But you just want to be warned at that point. Then you might set up a high alarm at 15 inches, for example. That would tell you, hey, this site's going into surcharge if it was a 15-inch pipe, for example. And that might require a different level of action on your part. So we have set this up to give you both low and low, low, and high high alarms. Under the actions portion of the alarm, this is where we will set up what happens when this alarm condition occurs. Do we want to send an SMS from the logger? Send an email from the logger? Do we want to trigger a sampler? Do we want to switch to a secondary log interval? Do we want to switch to a secondary call interval? Do we want to send an SMS from the server or send an email from the server? I'm going to change the trigger on this power supply alarm to be a value something other than 0, which is actually rather silly. So I'm going to change this to 9 volts and click Save. And it's going to ask me if I'm sure I want to save the changes, and yes I am. Okay. So I've set up that alarm. Under system alarms, we have many different types. For example, low main power, slate memory, sensor timeouts, etc. Under system alarm actions, we have our usual 4. Send an SMS from the logger, an email from the logger, an SMS from the server, or an email from the server. Now for our recipient list. We have 2 sections here. We have our SMS, which is listed as mobile, or our email, labeled email. So if I want to receive an alarm, I can enter my email address here. So now I have my list set up for email, and if I want to add my text information, I can go ahead and enter my mobile phone number here. So that's my recipient list. So now if I go back to my channel alarms, and I can select under the actions menu to send me an SMS from the logger when my power supply drops below 9 volts. To prevent chatter, the deadband is set at 1 volt, so that if it drops to 8.9 volts and then the temperature changes a little bit and the voltage raises up to 9.1 volts, for example, I don't get this chatter on and off and get repeated messages. So I'm happy with it just sending it to me from the logger. So the difference between sending it from the logger or sending from the server is that a server-based alarm will send a message from the server located at HOC. So the instrument would need to call in to the server at its regularly scheduled time. The server then analyzes that data, and then the server sends the message out. In the send the message from the logger, the FL900 itself will actually send me the SMS message or email directly from the logger without going through the server. I'm going to save that change. Okay. So when the power supply, or battery in this case, on Interceptor G drops below 9 volts, I will receive an email message. The next thing I want to look at are samplers. So I can set up sampler pacing on my FL900, and I could do it here on this tab. If I want to enable this feature, I will simply select which sensor port I want to use as my pacing source. In other words, in this case, going back earlier in this lesson, we saw that I was using a FLODAR on sensor port 1, an SVS on sensor port 2, and a TOTE on sensor port 3. I can select which sensor is used to pace my sampler. So in this case, I'm going to choose the FLODAR, and I'm going to use a pacing interval of every 10,000 gallons. And I'll save that, and that will be programmed into the instrument. So every 10,000 gallons, a pulse will be sent to my sampler that's connected at Interceptor G.